Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who've died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. And in our ongoing series on Nobel Prize winners, tonight we're going to devote the first half of our program to Kofi Annan, who died recently at the age of 80. Kofi Annan was the Secretary General of the United Nations from January 1997 to December 2006, and he was awarded half of the Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo in 2001, along with the United Nations, for his peacekeeping work. I just learned from Sid's daughter that the Nobel Peace Prize is given in Oslo, as opposed to all the other Nobel Prizes which are awarded in Stockholm.
I call upon the Peace Prize laureate for 2001, Secretary General Kofi Atta Annan, to come forward to receive the gold medal and the diploma.
Kofi Annan was born in what was then the Gold Coast, is now Ghana, and he became the seventh Secretary General of the United Nations.
I, Kofi Annan, solemnly swear to exercise in all loyalty, discretion and conscience, the functions entrusted to me as Secretary General of the United Nations. Congratulations, sir.
Here's CGTN Africa Television to discuss the death of Kofi Annan and a brief interview with him about conditions in Africa.
Former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan has died. He served as the UN chief from January 1997 to December 2006. He was a co-recipient of the 2001 Nobel Peace Prize along with the UN, and of course serving for almost 10 years. He was also born in Kumasi in Ghana. Annan went on to study economics at Macalester College, international relations from the Graduate Institute of Geneva, as well as management at MIT. He joined the UN in 1962, working first for the World Health Organization's Geneva office, and then going on to work in several capacities at the UN headquarters, including serving as the Under Secretary General for Peacekeeping between March 1992 and December 1996. He was appointed Secretary General on the 13th of December 1996 by the Security Council and later confirmed by the General Assembly, making him the first office holder to be elected from the UN staff itself. He was re-elected for a second term in 2001 and was succeeded as Secretary General by Ban Ki-moon on the 1st of January 2007. While CGTN's Beatrice Marshall spoke to Kofi Annan in 2012 in an exclusive interview.
I will start by saying that there are some leaders who have done well. There are many who have overstayed. I really believe that any leader who has done more than 2 terms, or at least 3, should begin looking around and thinking of his or her future. Because if they continue and insist on sticking around, they will going to have troubles. The population will demand change. And this is why we have all opted for democracy and for democratic rotation of leadership.
Well, there have been, most African countries, though, have gone through the electoral process over the last 2 decades. And as you have said before, though, that much of Africa's progress in the last decade risks being squandered or reversed by the winner-take-it-all approach.
Yeah, I don't think the coalition government approach is a solution for every country or for every situation. There have been lots of elections which have been a veneer to give the leader a false respectability, when in fact the elections were not true elections at all and were rigged. And those are the situations which often causes problems. But if it's election with integrity, which is transparent, accountable, open playing field, then the results and the elections itself are accepted generally, and the leader has legitimacy.
In terms of economic change, though, in terms of the good economic prospects, what do you see have been some of the factors that have propelled Africa to where it is today?
First of all, there's better governance, better macroeconomic policies in quite a few of the countries. Secondly, you have other new players on the ground. You have the emerging markets, China, Brazil, India, Malaysia, Indonesia, others also coming to the continent to invest. in addition to the traditional investors and donors from the West. We also have another development. We have young, educated, hungry, angry men and women who want to get on with their lives, who want to see improvements in their societies. Some have been educated and worked in the United States, in Europe, Asia, and are coming back. And they are going to make a difference. I think we should encourage this reverse brain drain and put them to work, and also remove the red tape and the impediments that sometimes frustrates the young people. And finally, we're going to have the generational change. And we need that generational change, not just in politics, but in business, farming, and in education.
Well, as the newscaster said, he got a degree from MIT, and in 1997 he gave the commencement address there, and here's a little bit of it.
When the world thinks of MIT alumni and alumni who have gone on to assume positions of visibility in their respective fields, as so many have, it correctly imagines Nobel laureates in physics, chemistry, economics, or business tycoons or engineers improving our daily lives in countless ways. But as Secretary General of the United Nations, that's hardly the first answer anyone would blurt out on a TV quiz show. And yet, it is not as much of a stretch as it may seem at first. For the ethos of science and engineering shares deep and profound similarities with the 20th century project of international organization. Science and international organization alike are constructs of reason engaged in a permanent struggle against the forces of unreason. Science and international organization alike are experimental, both learn by trial and error, and strive to be self-correcting. Lastly, science and international organization alike speak a universal language and seek universal truths.
Finally, here are segments from 3 of his key speeches as Secretary General of the UN. The first is on the Iraq War, the second is on the crisis in Darfur, and the third is on his retirement as Secretary General.
Perhaps if we had persevered a little longer, Iraq could yet have been disarmed peacefully, or if not, the world could have taken action to solve this problem by a collective decision. Sadly, once again, the biggest challenge comes from Africa, from Darfur, where the continuous spectacle of men and women and children driven from their homes by murder, rape, and burning of their villages makes a mockery of our claim as an international community to shield people from the worst abuses. I depart convinced that today's United Nations does more than ever before. It does it better than ever before. Yet, our work is far from complete. Indeed, it will never be.
I want to move on and make a brief mention of 2 Chicagoans. The first is Anita Miller, who died recently at the age of 91. She was the petite but feisty publisher, along with her husband Jordan, of Academy Chicago Publishers. And they were the publishing house that published my books. Anita was a nice Jewish girl from the north side of Chicago, Roosevelt High School. I think she's our 5th Roosevelt podcast grad. She had a brilliant mind and a sardonic wit, both of which I can attest to personally. She had a great eye for a good book and a flair with an editor's pen. And she was also an excellent author in her own right. She wrote a couple of great books, including Tea and Antipathy, about her family's one-year sojourn to Britain in the mid-60s, where, among other things, they met the Beatles. Let's just say the rest of the trip was not as auspicious. Her other book was Uncollecting Cheever, The Family of John Cheever versus Academy Chicago Publishers, which tells the story of the 4-year lawsuit they had with the legal estate of John Cheever when they acquired some of his works after his death and wanted to publish them. The Cheever family initially agreed, then didn't agree, and got their big-time lawyers in against Academy Chicago in a David versus Goliath sort of issue. And even though, in my opinion, they were in the right, They sacrificed the venue to New York, and who do you think is going to win? A small Chicago publishing house or the estate of John Cheever, especially when the other side has sharp-edged guys like Martin Garbus and Andrew Wiley on it. All the legal costs crippled Academy Chicago for the rest of its days, but Anita never gave up her feistiness and her sense of humor. I loved having lunch with her. I didn't always agree with her politically, but she was a wonderful person to be around. A Renaissance woman, the kind you don't see much anymore. And she and Jordan were happily married for 70 years. The other Chicagoan is Stephen Shapiro, who died recently at the age of 72, one of the top lawyers in the country at Meyer Brown. Nice boy from the North Shore of Chicago, proud graduate of New Trier High, and he had a wonderful resume that included founding Meyer Brown's Supreme Court and Appellate practice. He argued 30 cases before the Supreme Court and briefed another 200 or more, and was generally acknowledged as among the most accomplished and celebrated appellate lawyers in the United States. He became a partner at Meyer Brown in 1978 and then left to join the Solicitor General's office. He became the Deputy Solicitor General in 1981 in the Reagan administration and then came back to Meyer Brown in 1983. In addition, he mentored other lawyers, wrote books, and one law journal said he combined sheer brilliance with humility and an unfailing ability to realize what the justices are interested in. Through his efforts, Meyer Brown became the largest Supreme Court and appellate practice in the country. I can also say that after talking to a couple of people who knew him personally, besides his brilliance, he was a wonderfully nice, personable guy and quite a family man. He and his wife were married for 36 years, and he died under rather tragic circumstances. His death was a loss to the community locally and to the legal community nationally. Well, we're going to close tonight with Morgana King, who died recently at the age of 87. She was born Maria Grazia Morgana Messina, nice Italian Catholic girl whose parents were Sicilian. She grew up in New York City, and she was a singer and an actress. She only had one major movie role, but it was a notable one. Francis Ford Coppola made her Marlon Brando's wife in The Godfather. That's right, she was Don Vito's wife. She sings Luna Mezza Mare in the wedding scene in Godfather I, and she has a death scene in Godfather II. And here she talks about being the matriarch of the Corleone family and also about Marlon Brando in the movie.
Singer Morgana King as Mama Corleone.
He's always been on top of the situation, and they have this large family of children that they love very deeply. She's very, very involved with his life, but she doesn't involve his life into the family picture. That's outside. It always remains outside. She really thinks Michael's going to come out of this whole situation to possibly run for the presidency. You know, she thinks that's perfectly logical, that her son Michael could be the president of the United States. Whereas Sonny's just a good boy, and she's probably been protecting him all his life against all of the hassles that he found to get involved with. Watch his scenes, because he brings a dimension to this Don that is so beautiful. I love watching him. I love the character that he becomes, that man from the other side of the world who is very family-orientated and family-minded, and everything he does is for his family, and that's the way he extends himself to his friends. And Marlon has that deep warmth. He really has that marvelous eye of an actor. This morning, the Don died in the scene, and it was heartbreaking to see this old man die. It just, I didn't want to see that image go away, It hurt. It really hurt to think that Don Corleone was dead.
Well, I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius, Sid Tepps. And as I said, Morgana King was also a singer. She was a great jazz singer, really underrated. In 1964, she was nominated for a Grammy for the Best New Artist. She lost to some group named the Beatles. I wonder whatever happened to them. In any event, one of the songs she made her name with in the jazz clubs and on television was also a song the Beatles covered, A Taste of Honey. So here it is as a closing tribute to Morgana King.
Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Morgana King.
Winds may blow over the icy sea. I'll take with me the warmth of thee and a taste of honey. A taste much sweeter than